Hello everyone, welcome to today's story. After a long night of torment, James is still haunted by the doubts Tung left behind. But things don't stop there. Tung comes straight to see Diep, bringing with him both his affection and his unyielding resolve. On one side is James, quietly caring yet torn by self-doubt. On the other is Tung, relentless in his pursuit, refusing to let go. This silent clash between two men, where will it ultimately lead Diep? Join me in today's episode, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments so we can experience this story together. Dawn filtered through the leaves, soft golden light spilling across the weathered wooden eaves. The crowing of roosters echoed, blending with the chatter of ducks, filling the quiet air with a sudden, lively warmth. Half asleep, Diep heard the sound of a knife chopping, the crackle of firewood burning beneath the stove. She stirred, then slowly stepped outside. Before her was a scene that stilled her breath. James, his white shirt smudged with ash, crouched by the hearth, tending to a pot of porridge. Moments later, he bustled about carrying food into the yard, then knelt to chop banana stalks, mixing feed for the chickens and ducks. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his hands covered in dirt. Yet his face shone with patience and quiet tenderness. James, a man once accustomed to contracts and cold numbers, was now immersed in this humble farmstead, caring for every small corner of its life. Diep stood silently under the eaves, her eyes shimmering. Her heart swelled with warmth and comfort, passion, as though lit by the morning sun. In that fleeting moment, she understood. Behind his strength, James was pouring all his gentleness into mending her world. The fragile girl he vowed to protect with all he had. Diep drew closer, her eyes still tinged with hesitation, yet warmth stirred within her. She sat beside James, her hands gently cupping the steaming bowl of porridge he had prepared. Looking at his face beaded with sweat, she couldn't hold back a surge of emotion. When his hand brushed softly against hers, they both fell silent, letting the morning light and birdsong speak the words they could not. James smiled faintly, tucking a loose strand of hair from her forehead. His voice was tender. "Take care of yourself. I have to step out for a while, but I'll be back soon." Diep only nodded, her gaze following him, filled with worry, yet overflowing with trust. Left alone at the farm, she quietly rolled up her sleeves. Beneath the shade of the trees, she gripped a small hoe, each swing falling slowly onto the dry earth. Her frail hands grew smeared with soil, yet in her eyes gleamed a quiet resilience. As tiny seeds slipped into the loosened soil, Diep smiled faintly. Deep inside, she whistled, spurred to herself. "I must get well. I must be strong, so I won't become a burden to the man who's giving me his all." The morning sun poured over the garden, glinting on the beads of sweat along her cheek. Her slender figure stood alone among the tender rows of greens, yet radiated a beauty of peace and hope. It was like a silent promise to herself and to the love she was striving to hold on to. By midday, the garden lay drenched in sunlight, golden beams weaving through the canopy of leaves. The forest birds sang like a countryside hymn, mingling with the soft clang of a hoe striking earth. Diep bent low over the vegetable rows, her hands smeared with soil, yet her eyes alight, as though entrusting all her hopes to the tender shoots of green. Each seed she planted felt like a new heartbeat, a whispered promise to the future. At the bamboo gate, the sound of footsteps rose softly. Tung appeared. His black suit seemed out of place against the rustic backdrop, and his gaze carried a heavy, unspoken sorrow. He stood there for a long while, silently watching Diep amid the rows of vegetables. The wind sighed through the bamboo, echoing the wavering unrest in his heart. Diep looked up, startled for an instant, then forced a faint smile. She invited Tung to sit at the bamboo table beneath the trellis. A pot of tea released its gentle fragrance, as if trying to soothe the heavy air. Tung set down a bright red gift bag on the table, his voice rough and low. "I just wanted to see if you're living well." Diep bowed her head slightly, her fingers tightening around the teacup as though searching for support. Her voice, soft but resolute, rang out like a slow, lingering song. "I am well, because with James by my side, I feel at peace enough to go on." In that moment, Tung's eyes faltered. His face stiffened, then softened into a strained smile. But behind it, a silent tide churned. The muted music of a man who loved, yet could not hold on. Beyond, the wind still sang across the garden, the leaves rustling like fate's whisper. In the gentle golden light, two people sat across from each other, yet one carried in his heart a longing he could never reach. The dirt road leading out of the orange grove lay in silence, broken only by the whisper of wind threading through the leaves, like secrets too elusive to grasp. James returned, his figure plain yet steadfast, each step firm, though his eyes still carried a weight of reflection. At the lane's entrance, Tung emerged from the farm, his black suit starkly at odds with the golden morning light. His steps were slow, heavy, as if burdened with an unrest that refused to fade. The moment their eyes met, no greeting, no words exchanged. Only a silence so dense it quivered like a taut string. In James's gaze lay the quiet resolve of a man determined to protect the fragile happiness he held. In Tung's eyes flickered challenge mingled with sorrow, as if to ask, "Are you truly worthy of her?" There they stood, among the lush green rows, and the short distance between them suddenly became an invisible boundary. On one side, enduring love. On the other, feelings long suppressed. There was no music, yet the audience could still hear the pounding of hearts, urgent, stifled. A confrontation that needed no words, for their eyes spoke everything. James walked slowly across the shaded courtyard, where noonday sunlight slipped through the leaves, painting shimmering streaks across his shirt. On the rustic bamboo table, Diep sat silently, with a teapot still warm, as though waiting for words of comfort. James stopped, gazing at her for a long moment. In his eyes lingered sorrow entwined with resolve. The resolve never to let her face loneliness again. He gently pulled out a chair and sat down, his voice low yet tender, breaking the hush of the moment. "Diep, why don't you come stay at my house for a few days? My mother is there, and you'll have a place to rest. I want to take care of you." Diep lowered her head slightly, her hands clasping tightly together. She hesitated, her heart wavering between self-doubt and the longing to be sheltered. After a moment of silence, she nodded softly. Just a small nod, yet enough to make James's eyes light up, warm, as if sealing a promise. The black car rolled out of the gate, its engine echoing through the still midday air. Through the glass, Diep glanced back, watching the garden and the little wooden house shrink into the distance. Not far away, Among the vast stretch of green, Tung stood motionless. The wind tugged at his black suit, yet his eyes were heavy, as if wanting to hold on, but powerless to do so. His gaze followed the car as it faded from view, leaving within him a hollow ache, part sorrow, part resentment, part tenderness. In that moment, all three carried their own burden in silence. One chose to let go, one struggled to hold on, and one, caught in between, still uncertain where her heart would find peace. But could Diep's choice today lead her to happiness, or open yet another storm-filled turn in her life?
You can